There's a quiet story many of us start to believe as we get older. It doesn't arrive all at once. It comes in fragments, suggestions, glances, and jokes from younger people. In the silence in your doctor's office when you try to describe something that's hard to put into words. In the feeling that you've become invisible to others, to yourself, even to the person who used to know your body as well as you know your own name. It's the story that after 60 or 65 or 70 or whenever it begins for you, intimacy simply fades. That closeness becomes less important, less natural. That affection, touch, desire, are things you were once allowed to want, but now should quietly set aside. As if there's a shelf where we're supposed to leave these parts of ourselves once we reach a certain age. And because we're not taught otherwise, many of us begin to accept it. We adjust. We retreat. We stop reaching out for a hand in the dark. We stop expecting anything new to begin. We mourn, silently and alone, a part of life that once made us feel real, alive, without knowing if it's even okay to miss it. But today, I want to tell you something that I've learned over 35 years as a physician and over 70 years as a human being. That story is a lie. My name is Dr. James Warren, and for more than 3 decades I've worked with men and women in their 60s, 70s, 80s, and yes, even 90s, who've reminded me, again and again, of a beautiful truth, that intimacy does not disappear with age. It changes. It softens. It matures. And in that change lies a kind of richness that youth simply can't reach. The touch of a hand at 70 means something different than it does at 30. Not better or worse, just deeper. There's a history in it, a presence, a sense of choosing one another not in the flush of instinct, but in the quiet clarity of love. But here's where it gets complicated. Because our bodies do change with time, and so does our chemistry, our sleep, our ability to recover from stress. And sometimes, those changes get in the way, not just physically, but emotionally. A man whose blood flow isn't what it used to be might withdraw not because he doesn't want to connect, but because he's afraid he'll disappoint. A woman struggling with dryness or discomfort might turn away not because she's uninterested, but because she dreads the shame of pain or failure. It doesn't take much to make someone feel like they've lost their right to be touched, to be desired, to feel whole. That's where this conversation begins. Not with some promise of a miracle cure, but with a gentle invitation to believe, once again, that you are still allowed to feel. On my channel, Age Well Today, I don't try to sell the fantasy of turning back time. What I offer is something both more honest and more hopeful. Small, real changes that can help you come back to yourself, not as you were at 25, but as you are now. Still worthy, still capable of warmth, closeness, and joy. And today, I want to share something surprisingly simple, but quietly powerful. It's not a supplement. It's not a medication. It's not a new device or a complicated routine. It's fruit. That's right, for simple fruits. The kind you might walk past in the grocery store without a second thought. But I've seen them change lives. I've seen them restore confidence, revive circulation, calm the nervous system, and help men and women reclaim a relationship with their own bodies. Why fruit? Because food is more than fuel. The right foods can be medicine, especially when they target the very systems that shape how we experience intimacy. Blood flow, hormones, inflammation, mood, and sleep. And when those systems are supported, the doors to closeness, both physical and emotional, begin to open again. But before we dive into the first of those fruits, I want to pause here with a simple message. You are not broken. If you've been feeling distance from your partner or from yourself, if you've been avoiding the mirror or hesitating to reach for someone's hand, or wondering if those days of connection are over for good, please know, they're not. There's still time. There's still life. There's still love. And sometimes that restoration starts with the smallest step. One bite, one habit, one whisper to your own body, I still care about you. We're going to talk about 4 fruits. But what we're really talking about is returning to presence, to pleasure, to the possibility that aging doesn't have to mean closing off. It can mean opening up, again, in a new way. So if you're ready, I invite you to join me on this quiet journey. Not toward youth, but toward renewal. Because you don't have to be young to be alive. You just have to be willing to begin again. Let's begin with something familiar. Something you might already have in your refrigerator, sitting in a bowl on the counter, or sliced into your morning oatmeal. Red grapes. At first glance, they're nothing special. Sweet, convenient, maybe even a childhood snack. But inside that smooth, jewel-toned skin lies one of the most quietly powerful compounds I've come across in 35 years of medical practice, resveratrol. Resveratrol is an antioxidant. But more than that, it's a helper of the blood vessels. It supports something called vascular flexibility, the ability of your arteries and veins to expand and contract with ease, allowing blood to move freely, smoothly, confidently through your body. And that's not just about heart health. It's about energy, brain function, and yes, intimacy. You see, one of the most common changes I see in my patients after 60 is reduced blood flow. It happens gradually. Legs get colder. Memory gets foggier. That sensation of slowing down isn't just psychological, it's circulatory. And one of the first areas to feel that decline is the one we're often least comfortable talking about, the pelvis. For men, this can mean reduced physical response or difficulty maintaining arousal. For women, it can show up as numbness, dryness, or a fading sense of connection to their own body. And in both cases, what starts as a physical shift often becomes an emotional one. People begin to doubt themselves. They avoid closeness not because they've lost interest, but because they fear disappointment. They don't want to explain what's changed. They don't want to feel broken. And so, they pull away. But what if we could support the body's natural response again, not with pharmaceuticals or pressure, but with something gentle, nourishing, and completely natural? That's what I began to see in my patients who added red grapes to their routine. Let me tell you about Henry. Henry was 74 when he came to see me. He'd recently retired, and for the first time in years, he was spending real time with his wife, without work between them. But instead of feeling closer, they were growing apart. He told me, quietly, it's not that I don't want to be with her. It's just, nothing's working the way it used to. We talked about options, about stress, about rest. And then, almost as an afterthought, I mentioned red grapes. Just a handful with lunch, I said. Every day. Give it a few weeks. He looked at me like I'd lost my mind. Grapes? He asked. That's your big advice? I smiled. Just try. For weeks later, he came back. Sat down in the same chair. Same plaid shirt. But this time, he smiled first. I don't know what's in those things, he said. But I feel like I'm back in the game. Then, after a pause, he added something that stuck with me. She noticed before I did. Because that's how it works. When blood flows, life flows. The body responds. And when the body responds, the heart opens. We begin to feel capable again. Not just physically, but emotionally. There's another piece to this that's just as important. Red grapes support nitric oxide production. That's a compound your body makes to help relax blood vessels. And it's a major player in healthy blood pressure, cognitive clarity, and, yes, intimate response. So while it might sound too simple, too sweet, too small, red grapes can be a gentle, delicious step toward restoring what time, stress, and silence may have begun to take away. Now, I'm not saying grapes are a miracle. They won't reverse every change or solve every challenge. But what they can do is offer your body the support it needs to do what it wants to do naturally, respond, connect, and feel alive. And the beauty is, there are no side effects, no prescriptions, no awkward pharmacy trips, just a handful a day, a small act of nourishment, a quiet act of self-respect. Because when we care for our bodies, even in simple ways, we send a message to ourselves, you still matter. And that message goes deeper than arteries or hormones. It reaches into the part of us that remembers what it feels like to be touched, to be wanted, to want. So the next time you pass by the fruit aisle, pause for a moment. Reach for the red grapes, not as a snack, but as a symbol that you're not giving up, that you believe in small beginnings, that you're still in this life, and that closeness, warmth, and yes, passion are still very much available to you. It may seem like just fruit, but for some, it's been the first step back into connection. The first signal to the body and to the heart that you're still here, and you're still capable of joy. Cranberries clearing the hidden barriers to closeness. Now let's talk about a fruit that's often misunderstood. It's not flashy. It doesn't have the sweetness of grapes or the lushness of cherries. In fact, many people only associate it with holiday sauces or juice boxes. But the humble cranberry holds a quiet power, especially for those of us over 60, because it supports something most of us don't talk about nearly enough: comfort. Let me explain. Intimacy, at any age, depends on the ability to feel safe in your body, to feel free of irritation, tension, or discomfort. And while we often focus on hormones or circulation when we talk about physical connection, we forget another major player: the health of the pelvic and urinary systems. You see, as we age, changes in the bladder, kidneys, and surrounding tissues can have ripple effects on how we feel about touch, closeness, and even desire. For women, this often shows up as dryness, irritation, or an increase in urinary tract infections. For men, it can mean frequent urges to go, low-grade discomfort, or embarrassment around control. These are the kinds of issues that rarely get mentioned. They're too awkward, too personal. People don't want to bring them up in conversation, even with a doctor. But what I've seen, again and again, is how deeply they affect someone's willingness to be close to another human being. Because when you associate touch with pain, or when your body feels unpredictable or inflamed, it becomes incredibly difficult to open up emotionally, even if you want to. That's where cranberries come in. Cranberries are one of nature's most powerful anti-inflammatory foods for the lower urinary tract. They contain compounds called proanthocyanidins, natural substances that help prevent harmful bacteria from sticking to the walls of the bladder and urinary tract. What does that mean in real life? Less irritation, fewer infections, calmer tissues, and most importantly, a growing sense of ease and confidence in your own body. Let me tell you about Marilla. Marilla was 68 when she came to see me. She'd been widowed for many years and then, unexpectedly, found love again. She met someone through a community music group. It started with conversation, then with laughter. Then, one day, she told me, I didn't expect this. I didn't expect to feel this way again. But with that excitement came anxiety. Every time they got close, truly close, she felt tense. Not because of fear of rejection, but because of the very real pain she experienced during intimacy. She'd never spoken about it before. She felt embarrassed, ashamed, and she was terrified of disappointing someone she deeply cared for. I asked her about her hydration, her daily routine, her diet, and then I made a small suggestion, a handful of cranberries each morning, or a simple unsweetened cranberry smoothie. No sugar, no additives, just the pure fruit. 6 weeks later, Marilla returned to my office with tears in her eyes. I'm not afraid anymore, she said. She wasn't talking about her new relationship. She was talking about her body, about how it no longer betrayed her with stinging or soreness, how she no longer braced herself during closeness, how she could, for the first time in years, simply enjoy being touched. That's the quiet miracle of addressing inflammation and urinary discomfort. Because when you take away the pain, even the mild, nagging kind you've grown used to, you don't just relieve the body. You open a door back into trust, into softness, into connection. Cranberries also support a healthier balance of bacteria in the gut and urogenital tract, something many people don't realize plays a direct role in mood, hormonal balance, and immune strength. In other words, this small, tart fruit works on multiple levels, helping you feel better physically, emotionally, and energetically. Now, you may be wondering, do I need to eat them raw? What if I don't like the taste? Here's the good news. You don't need a handful of raw berries every day, although you certainly can. A high-quality, unsweetened cranberry juice, just a small glass in the morning, can offer many of the same benefits. Or try adding them to a smoothie with banana and plain yogurt. You don't have to make it a chore. Just make it a choice. Because every time you choose to reduce inflammation in your body, you're making space for comfort, for trust, for tenderness. I know it may sound like a stretch that something as small as a cranberry could affect your sense of intimacy, but I've seen it again and again. When we address the quiet, hidden discomforts, we restore the foundation that closeness is built on. Touch without tension, affection without fear, being held, and being able to stay in that moment, not because you push through the pain, but because the pain is finally gone. That's the promise of healing. And sometimes, it begins with a fruit. So don't overlook the small things. They may be the very beginning of something large, your return to ease, to affection, and to the kind of connection that doesn't just stir the body, but calms the soul. Papaya and cherries, gentle energy, deep harmony. Let's move now to two fruits that don't often appear on the same plate, but together tell a beautiful story, one of balance. One that speaks to both energy and calm, hormones and heart. These fruits are papaya and cherries, and their effects, especially for those of us in the second half of life, are more powerful than most people realize. Let's start with papaya. This golden, tropical fruit isn't just a taste of summer. It's a quiet supporter of hormonal vitality, gentle digestion, and energy renewal. For men, papaya contains key enzymes and nutrients that help support natural testosterone production. Not the kind of aggressive hormone spikes you see marketed to younger men, but a softer, more sustainable support for the body's own rhythm. And for women, papaya offers another kind of gift, It helps balance estrogen levels, reduces inflammation in the pelvic area, and even promotes better sleep. It's rich in vitamin C, beta-carotene, and folate, all nutrients that support mood regulation, immune health, and tissue repair. But perhaps more than anything, papaya helps people feel available again, available to their own energy, their own emotions, and to the people around them. Let me tell you about Stephen. Stephen was 71 when his wife nudged him into my office, not out of concern, but out of curiosity. "He's just tired all the time," she said. "He still loves me. We still enjoy each other's company. But the spark? It's like he left it behind somewhere." Stephen agreed. "It's not that I don't want to connect," he said. "It's just, I don't have the energy for it. Even late-night conversations feel like work." We talked about his sleep, his diet, his stress. And then I offered something unexpected: half a papaya, 3 times a week. Eaten slowly. No distractions. Just him, a spoon, and the bright orange fruit. 3 weeks later, he returned, smiling. "You know what changed?" he asked. "Not just my energy. My mood. I want to talk at night now. We laugh again. And we don't stop there." He winked. His wife smiled. "That's what happens when the body is given the right fuel, not stimulants, not pressure, but nourishment. The kind that works with you, not against you." Now, let's turn to cherries. If papaya is the sunrise, cherries are the dusk, the quiet return to rest, regulation, and peace. Cherries, especially tart cherries, are one of nature's richest sources of melatonin. That's the hormone your brain uses to regulate the sleep-wake cycle. And as anyone over 60 knows, sleep doesn't always come easily. Hormonal shifts, medications, nighttime discomfort, and even emotional stress can disrupt our ability to rest deeply. But when sleep suffers, so does everything else. Our memory, our focus, our patience, and yes, our desire for closeness. It's hard to feel romantic when you're exhausted. It's even harder to be present in your body when your nervous system is on edge. That's why I love cherries, not just as a snack, but as a form of gentle medicine. They help the body wind down. They reduce oxidative stress. They support the cardiovascular system and brain function. And for many of my patients, they've become a quiet ritual that leads not only to better rest, but to better connection. Because when the body feels safe enough to sleep, it often feels safe enough to be touched. Let me tell you about Eileen. Eileen was 66, newly remarried after years of being on her own. She loved her partner deeply, but she couldn't settle. Her mind raced at night. Her body felt tight. She couldn't let herself relax enough to enjoy the closeness she once treasured. "I feel like I'm holding my breath all the time," she told me, "even when he's just reaching for my hand." We didn't start with counseling or medication. We started with cherries. A small bowl after dinner. No screens. No noise. Just a moment to honor rest. Within a month, her sleep improved. But more than that, her relationship deepened. "I'm not bracing anymore," she said. "I'm softening." And he feels it. We both do. That's the role of cherries. They don't force change. They allow it. Together, papaya and cherries offer a complete circle. One brings gentle activation, the other deep restoration. One says, "Wake up." The other whispers, "It's safe to rest." And both speak to a deeper truth about intimacy in our later years, that it doesn't come from forcing anything. It comes from aligning with the body's natural rhythm, from saying yes to nourishment, and from learning that connection isn't something you chase, it's something you allow. So if you've been feeling too tired, too wired, too unsure of where to begin, consider these fruits as companions, not solutions. Let them work quietly, consistently. Let them remind your body that it's still capable of feeling, of responding, of reaching. Because intimacy is not just about passion. It's about presence. And sometimes, presence begins with peace. It's not too late, and there's so much still ahead. At this point, you may be thinking, really? Fruits. It might sound too simple, too gentle, too ordinary. And yet, after 3.5 decades in medicine, working with thousands of people navigating life after 60, I've come to believe something very deeply, that the most profound changes often start with the smallest shifts. A morning ritual, a walk after dinner, a bowl of cherries instead of a glass of wine. Not because these things fix everything, but because they're acts of care, of intention, of saying to yourself, "I'm still here, and I still matter." Because that's the real heart of intimacy in our later years. It's not about proving anything to anyone. It's not about recapturing youth or measuring up to some past version of yourself. It's about belonging again to your own skin, your own breath, your own longing. And from there, maybe to someone else. One of the most heartbreaking things I hear from people in their 60s, 70s, or 80s is this: I think it's too late. Too late to feel love again. Too late to rediscover touch. Too late to ask for something more. But let me tell you what I've seen, again and again. It's not too late. Not even close. I've seen couples who hadn't shared a bed in 10 years fall back into each other's arms after a single open conversation. I've seen widows and widowers in their 70s fall in love like teenagers, with the same butterflies, the same spark. I've seen single people, long resigned to solitude, begin new chapters simply because they decided to treat their own bodies with kindness again. It doesn't happen overnight, but it does happen. And it starts with one decision: to believe that you're not done yet, that you still deserve warmth, that your hand still deserves to be held, that your name, your story, your presence still have weight in this world. The four fruits we've talked about: grapes, cranberries, papaya, and cherries, they're more than nutrition. They're gestures. Each one says something different. Grapes say, let the blood flow again. Cranberries say, let the pain go. Papaya says, wake up gently. And cherries say, rest now. It's safe. And when taken together, they form a quiet language of healing. A way of reminding your body and spirit that you're still capable, not just of functioning, but of feeling, of giving and receiving, of being touched, not just skin to skin, but soul to soul. That's what intimacy is at this stage of life. It's not flashy. It's not about performance. It's about presence, about sitting close without needing to speak, about knowing each other through glances, pauses, breath. It's about showing up as you are, not despite your age, but with it, because of it. And yes, your body may be different now, slower, softer, but it's not less. In fact, in many ways, it's more. More knowing, more sensitive, more capable of real connection. But only if you listen. Only if you slow down enough to hear what it's asking for, not demands or judgments, but nourishment. Not shame or silence, but respect. So here's my invitation. Don't try to do everything at once. Don't make a giant change. Start with one fruit, one choice, one quiet yes. Say yes to your heart. Say yes to your breath. Say yes to whatever longing still lives in your body, not because it needs to be proven, but because it deserves to be honored. And then wait. Watch. See what happens. Maybe you'll sleep a little better. Maybe your joints won't ache as much. Maybe your partner will notice a change in your energy. Or maybe, just maybe, you'll find yourself standing at the sink one evening, washing an apple or a bowl of grapes, and you'll look down at your own hands and think, I wouldn't mind if someone held these. And maybe, just maybe, someone will. Because this journey back to intimacy doesn't begin in the bedroom. It begins in the body. And it doesn't begin with another person. It begins with you. And if no one else has said it lately, let me be the one to say it now. You are not invisible. You are not past. You are not too late. You are present. And your presence matters. Thank you for being here, for listening, for choosing, in your own quiet way, to believe that healing is still possible. That feeling is still possible. That love, however it shows up for you, is still yours to receive. With deep respect, Dr. James Warren. Age well today. Please consider supporting this channel. Click like if this resonated. Leave a comment. I read every single one. And if you haven't already, subscribe and tap the notification bell so you don't miss what's next. This space only grows through community, through people like you who believe that aging should be filled not with silence, but with meaning. Together, we're changing the way we talk about later life, one honest, hopeful conversation at a time. With deep gratitude, Dr. James Warren.